I'm Ken Cerini, managing partner of Cerini Associates, for those of you who don't know me. And I really want to kind of talk a little bit about maybe the next normal and where things are going. So if you think about it, on March 18th, Governor Cuomo put New York State on a pause in an effort to curb the spread of the coronavirus. At that time, I don't think many of us thought that this would, still be going on or actually just coming to hopefully a conclusion, more than 15 months later when, Governor Cuomo last week lifted the pause and we can start to get back to whatever, normal is. In truth, if you think about it, we're never going to get back to the way things were prior to the pandemic. The world has shifted, life has shifted, the way we carry on business, communicate, interact, think, they've all shifted. As a result, the nonprofit sector has been forced to be innovative and dynamic and find ways to pivot in order to better meet the needs of the communities they serve and remain relevant. In some instances, the pivot has moved organizations outside their core mission or has resulted in an expansion of their mission, which will force organizations to potentially rethink what they're doing and what they should be doing. I mean, there's been a lot of what we call mission creep and everything. And I think organizations really need to go back and refocus and relook and strategically decide, who they want to be as they move forward. I mean, to give you an example, if you look at the YWCA during the pandemic functioned as an emergency shelter, providing safety for those impacted by domestic violence, providing trauma response, job training, and more. The question is, is that where YWCA wants to see or sees themselves moving forward or not? So again, these are going to be questions and challenges that organizations are going to need to face. In addition, the pandemic has forced organizations to reinvent their operational models to be more effective in meeting the needs of the individuals they serve and carrying out their mission. For instance, obviously, teletherapy and remote learning have become much more prevalent than in the past. For some, this new delivery system has created enhanced opportunities to change the lives, and for others, it's been a stopgap necessitated by the pandemic. Nonprofits need to evaluate these new delivery models to see if they provide effective and efficient ways for the organization to carry out its mission. There's no one right answer, and it will depend on each organization to determine what is the most appropriate for them and move towards their new next normal. In an increasingly digital-first world, nonprofits need to leverage data to inform decision-making, reach new audiences, personalize communications, and forecast fundraising income. But there will be more attacks on this data. So nonprofits will need to be increasingly vigilant about their cybersecurity. I mean, this is something we've seen out there. We've seen a lot more nonprofits get caught in hacking schemes, and they've had to pay out. So I think, again, this is going to be the new trend. There's going to be a lot more use of technology. Nonprofits have caught up with the for-profit world in terms of their technology use. But there is going to be, because of that, more concerns and issues that we have to worry about. On top of this, we experienced a significant level of upheaval during 2020. You've got, not only did you have the pandemic, but you had the Black Lives Matter movement, the presidential election that at times became polarizing. So upheaval can be good if we learn, change, and heal from it. And one of the great things about the nonprofit sector has long been a voice of reason and the catalyst for healing. The nonprofit sector will once again need to lead the way by bringing these issues to the forefront of discussion, advocating for policy changes, developing programs to level the playing field, becoming a resource and sounding board for more rational thinking, and leading the change and the healing process by example. So again, another key thing for the sector. The last 15 months, while requiring dynamic shifts in all aspects of how nonprofits operate, have been a reaction to situations thrust upon the sector by outside factors. It's now time for nonprofit leadership to move from reactive to proactive thinking. Crisis management needs to give way to strategic planning if the sector is going to move forward in an efficient and effective way. While the sector has and will continue to undergo change due to the dynamic world we live in, a constant remains. Nonprofits need to ensure that their voice and message is heard. We may be communicating differently, but it's important that communication continues to take place. What I'm going to do is I'm going to actually bring up my presentation here. So again, I think the topic of today is really the nonprofit sector, the next normal. So where are we as a sector? So obviously the coronavirus continues to take center stage as we start to emerge from the pandemic. The issues have changed. But again, I think it's still a lot of the same stuff. Where are staff going to work going forward? Are you going to be bringing people back to the office? Are people going to be working remotely? What's going on there? Vaccination and vaccination policies have been a big issue over the last month or so, as some of the larger, especially in the financial services world, some of the larger financial service companies are not letting their staff back unless they're vaccinated. And while New York has reached a saturation point of about 70% of people being vaccinated, there's a pocket of people who just don't want to get vaccinated or are still unsure. So how is that all going to be factored in? How are you going to be thinking about those types of issues? There's still, regulations that are out there that still need to be sorted out. I mean, if you think about what happened, the world went, dramatic back in March of 2020, where everything went from in-person stuff to remote. And it was kind of like a cliff where everybody came and kind of fell off the cliff and had to go from in-person to remote almost overnight. Now the pandemic has been lifted. And for a lot of you in the nonprofit world, there was a way that you were doing business under the pandemic. And the question now is, from a regulatory perspective, are you still able to do that? And there's been a whole lot of issues with that quick, hey, the pandemic is over, everybody can go back to doing things the way they were. Things like teletherapy and telehealth and all that, those are all issues that in terms of funding and stuff, are those going to be continued to get funded? How are they going to get funded? Are there going to be new policies and regulations surrounding those? So just because we're kind of at the quote unquote end of the pandemic, there's still a lot of issues that I think we need to kind of focus on. As I said before, the country's more polarized than it has been in decades. And again, this is something where the nonprofit sector kind of needs to step in and kind of help out there. Technology is more prevalent. The gap between for-profits and nonprofits when it comes to technology is shrinking, but technology is a more prevalent issue, and we'll talk about that in a little while. Ongoing communication, collaboration is essential. At all levels, and you're going to see that there's more communication that needs to take place straight across the board. And personally, I think we're going to see more consolidation in the sector. And I think a lot of that's going to come from, organizations have had a tough time getting through the pandemic. Some of the smaller organizations maybe don't have the funding. It's kind of a tale of two worlds. Some organizations have done very, very well under the pandemic, and some of them have suffered dramatically. So I think you're going to see some level of collaboration that takes place. There needs to be more strategic alliances at all levels. When you look at the strategic alliances, you're going to see, nonprofits going to need to work more closely with other nonprofits, work with the for-profit industries, and work with the public sector, which also then means the need for increased advocacy and everything else. Federal stimulus packages have provided relief for the sector, but those federal stimulus packages are going to dry up. There's been a lot of money that came in through the CARES Act and through the American Rescue Plan, and we've seen dollars coming through PPP, HHS, ERTC, and more. But those are all really designed to sunset by the end of this year. So the PPP money is going to, be done by the summer for most organizations. You've got ERTC, which goes through the end of the year. There's been some, trailing funds coming in from the American Rescue Plan, where those are now trickling in. But at the end of the day, when we get through the end of this year, nonprofits are going to have to stand on their own 2 feet again. And, you're not going to have that federal stimulus and federal help to kind of get you through there. Organizations need to remain dynamic and flexible. What we learned from COVID is that the only constant is change. Nonprofits were able to really pivot during the COVID pandemic, and that flexibility and that ability to be able to kind of be that dynamic and move with changing regulations is going to need to continue. Yes, the pandemic, hopefully we'll never have a pandemic like this, but there are always going to be other things. Look, the environment is changing. We've got global warming and everything else. There's going to be other things that occur where we're going to have to once again pivot and get to a new place. No more business as usual, unless usual means completely different. We all need to develop our new next normal. And that means for the nonprofit sector, you need to reassess yourselves and reinvent who you're going to be on a go-forward basis. What services will you provide? How will those services be delivered? Again, we've been doing a lot more stuff remotely. Where will they be delivered? We've seen that as nonprofits have gotten more remote, their catchment area has increased. So they're providing services not just locally, but their delivery patterns have changed. So is that going to continue or not? How will organizations raise funds? Are we going to go back to in-person events? Are we going to go to or keep the virtual events? Are we going to get to hybrid? So one of the things you have to consider is, things are not going to go back to the way they were. So, if things aren't going to go back to the way they were, why should we? So we always have to keep in mind that things are different now. So let's talk about some of the significant challenges. Obviously, with the quote unquote end of the pandemic, we have to ease back into the in-person programs, events, and conferences. And there are still two groups of people. There are people who are, done with the pandemic and who are craving the personal interaction. And then you also have a situation where you've got individuals who are just still not comfortable with all of this, and since they're still not comfortable with all of this, they're not ready to come back. So how do you manage those people both from a in-person and remote basis? And that's going to be important. And because of that, you're going to have to develop new employment strategies and policies. So how are you going to handle remote? Are you going to be bringing everybody back and forcing everybody to come into the office again? Are you going to allow more flexibility? Are you going to make it people's choice? Are you going to increase or bring people back, but make sure that there's still some level of social distancing? So how is that all going to work? How are you going to develop your strategies and stuff? And then again, from a policies perspective, I mentioned before, things like vaccination policies. What's your policy on vaccines? How are you going to deal with that? So again, these are all issues that kind of need to be considered. Things like attracting and retaining staff. I think one of the most significant issues that the sector is facing right now is there's been a difficulty in organizations being able to find some of those lower level staff members, the ones that you were paying, minimum wage or slightly above minimum wage, because of the enhanced dollars that individuals have been getting under the unemployment. So it's been tough for nonprofits to bring on people. With unemployment now potentially winding down come September, that may free up the market a little bit. What we've also seen some people who were working in the past maybe started up their own businesses and stuff. So we don't know what the labor market is really going to be. We haven't really seen the labor market in its truest form in over a year. So what is the labor market going to look like? Are we going to be able to hire those staff that we need? But again, that's been a challenge for a lot of organizations is finding the people that they need. Ability of financial support. Like I said, the financial support is running out by the end of this year. So what are nonprofits going to do? What does life after federal support look like? Organizations need to start thinking about that today. I mean, here we are. If you are a December 31st year end, we're about halfway through the year for this year, 2021. 2022 could be a challenging year. I think it's really important for organizations to go through the budgeting process and really look at their programming, look at everything, and really try to figure out what they're going to look like in 2022. Because 2022 is, like I said, you're not going to have that federal support that you had. So what are you going to be doing from a fundraising perspective? I mean, organizations over the last year have struggled on fundraising, and they may have lost some level of their donor base. or some organizations. I know I talked to Teresa Ignanti, who's going to be part of the panel later today. She said the United Way has done very, very well under the pandemic. So, you got to look at how you've been doing and how to keep the momentum or get that momentum that you need. There's been an overall decrease in services, especially in arts and cultural organizations, educational organizations. Enrollment's been down. You haven't been able to do things in person. Now that things are opening up and you're going to be able to do things in person again, what is it going to look like? Are we going to get back up to the pre-pandemic levels or not? So there's going to be some challenges in terms of budgeting and trying to understand how many people you're going to have at events and how quickly those events are going to fill up and how much money is going to be coming in from them. There's been an increase in demand for services from certain organizations, such as food pantries, housing, mental health. That's all been on the uptick. So again, if you're going to be continuing to provide more and more services, that's great that you're helping more people, but where's the money going to be coming from? The federal funds have helped buoyed some of the budgets, but if those go away, are you going to be able to continue to provide services at the level that you're providing them at? So those are all things that I think are going to be significant challenges as we move outside of the pandemic and back into whatever the next normal is going to be. You also have new technology related issues. As I said before, the nonprofit sector is caught up or almost caught up to the for-profit sector in terms of technology. Technology now runs so many different things we do. As I mentioned earlier, we have cybersecurity issues, but we also have issues, we've always had issues of, at least over the last few years, with storms and outages and everything else. Now that you're moving more and more to a technical world, maybe more of a remote world and everything, when you start having these sorts of outages and shutdowns, what does that do in terms of your ability to run your business that's now much more technology driven and on technology platforms? What have you done in terms of creating backup plans and all of that? When you had everybody coming to the office, maybe there was a generator there that kept things going, but now that people are working remotely, they may not have private generators. So what does that do in terms of productivity and workforce and everything else? So these are, again, all questions you have to consider. Communication with constituents, volunteers, donors is going to be important too. Most organizations have seen a drop-off in their donor base because they haven't been able to keep their donors engaged in their organizations during a pandemic, which has kept things remote. Now here we are with the need to try to figure out, who's still on board in terms of your volunteers. How do you reinvigorate some of those volunteer programs? How do you kind of look at your volunteers that are out there and try to figure out where they can best be used? So you want to try to figure out how to properly use and deploy volunteers, because you got volunteers over a broad base. I mean, if I've got younger volunteers, I may want to try to use some of those younger volunteers in terms of technology-based areas such as social media type campaigns and stuff. So again, I think we need to, as part of the next phase where we go into this strategic thinking, coming off the reactive thinking that we've done over the last 15 months, and it hasn't been reactive. I mean, that's a poor choice of words because everybody's had to pivot and they've had to be being creative in that pivot, but they've been really dealing with or reacting to changing regulations. Now we really need to, again, continue to look at where we want to be as an organization. So we need to understand the needs of the organization so that we can supplement internal skill sets with outside expertise of volunteers. And then obviously, diversity has been a key issue over the last year and a half, and diversity needs to continue to be at the forefront of everybody's thought process. It is a significant issue, and we need to continue to look for ways to gain insight and understanding within our organization and within our leadership that only comes from diversity. So again, I think you're seeing a greater level of thought process around diversity and including, diverse individuals within our boards, within our management team, within our staff. And I think that's important. And then obviously one thing that the nonprofit sector has always relied upon is advocacy and making sure that they're out there continuing to advocate for the specific needs of the organization and the sector that and that the subsector that the organization operates in. So advocacy is important. And one of the things that we kind of learned from the CARES Act, if you think about how the CARES Act kind of came out and when it was unveiled, there were a lot of holes in the CARES Act for the nonprofit sector. There were advantageous areas in terms of funding for-profit businesses that just didn't exist for nonprofit organizations. And it's kind of clear that, up in Washington, there really isn't a clear voice for the nonprofit sector. And I think what we really need is we need to have somebody in the president's cabinet who really is focused on the nonprofit sector and focused on the needs of the sector, because the nonprofit sector is very, very different from the for-profit sector. And unless, we're kind of thinking the nonprofit sector when laws are being passed and when regulations are being created and everything, I think, that puts the nonprofit sector at a disadvantage. So again, I think these are all really important challenges that the sector needs to continue to think about. So if we look at some of the top concerns, so this was a study that was done in 2021, early 2021, obviously pre the end of the pandemic. But still, I think some of this goes a long way in kind of focusing on the sector. I mean, obviously, everybody's concerned about safe operations. We want to bring everybody back safely. We want to make sure that, we continue to have policies in place to ensure the safety of everybody who we work with and who works with us. So that's going to be extremely important. We're still going to need to make sure that we stay on top of some of the regulations that are out there. I mean, just because the pandemic is over, it doesn't mean that COVID is gone. And we still have to make sure we keep everybody safe. We still need to make sure that, if someone has symptoms, what's our policy and are we handling that policy effectively? So again, I think that's still one of the big issues going into or continuing through the end of 2021. For many organizations, there's been a growing demand for service, as I said, and a lot of those service demands are not being funded. So the question is, how do we get those service demands funded, which comes back to, funding of operations, funding of staff. There's still a disparity between the for-profit world and the nonprofit world in terms of salaries. And with the shrinkage of staff, as I mentioned earlier, where there's a shortage of staff, nonprofits are having a tougher time attracting and retaining staff because they're just not available. And any ones that are available, are being sucked up by the for-profit world. There's still some level of systemic inequality, which we talked about again, that those diversity issues and how do we tackle those diversity issues. And I think the nonprofit sector has always been a leader in social change. And I think this is another area where the nonprofit sector is going to continue to be a leader and hopefully be the catalyst for social change across all platforms and across all sectors. Funding is continued to be an issue. Nonprofit organizations are continuing to grapple with fundraising issues. We've seen a lot of organizations that never did fundraising before jumping into the fundraising fray. Organizations trying to figure out this whole virtual world and how to do fundraising from a virtual perspective. So again, I think that's a situation that's going to need to continue. And then other issues, which I think we kind of talked about in the previous slide. Continuing along, COVID-19 has had a significant impact on the nonprofit sector. 35% of nonprofits experienced an increase in demand for services. And again, a lot of that came without funding. 75% of nonprofits reported that COVID-19 has negatively impacted revenues and funding. So I've got a 75% drop in revenue, and 75% of agencies have experienced a drop in Revenue and funding, 35% have experienced an increase in services. As you can tell, that doesn't really jive out well. 37% of organizations reduced their workforce. So a lot of them are trying to bring staff back now, but again, it's been tough. So there's been some furloughs and stuff, but people are collecting the unemployment. They're still getting the extra unemployment check. So it's been a little bit tougher. 24% of participants reported hiring during the COVID. And again, that goes hand in hand with the increase in services. Again, about 75% are looking at those new hires as permanent positions. So again, there's some positives here. So we talked about some of the important things. I mean, one of the most important things I think out there is the open communication. I mean, it's more critical now than ever. I mean, when people were working, you had a lot of people who, were not in the office, and you had to keep lines of communication open with your employees, your donors, your constituents. You weren't being able to see your donors on a regular basis as you did. You weren't putting on events where donors would be in the room and you can talk to them. So it really puts stress on communication. And as I said, I think for many organizations, as we come out of the pandemic, I don't think we're going back to the world that we were in where everybody is in the office. I think, people need to be more flexible or employers need to be more flexible in how they're dealing with their workforce. And those organizations that are not going to be flexible stand to lose some of their younger staff to organizations and employers that are going to be flexible. So we're in this new world where there needs to be some level of flexibility about work environment and everything else. So because we're in this new world of where flexibility needs to take place, again, I think communication is going to increasingly be important, and finding ways to keep your employees and donors connected to your organization is going to continue to be an important thing. As we've learned during the pandemic, things like monitoring workflow, regular check-ins, developing virtual engagement, all of those things have been pretty tough. And if we're going to be staying in a at least partially virtual world, again, I think it's important to try to continue to develop systems in these areas. Many of the constituents that we worked with rely heavily upon information service delivery, which we haven't necessarily been able to do. So in areas of like education, especially education of the developmentally disabled, working with individuals, both children and adults with special needs, and some of the other areas, we've seen a decline, or they're not advancing the way they should, and they've actually we've seen a decline in their abilities because of the pandemic. And, here we are coming out of, or hopefully coming out of the pandemic, where maybe we can do things more in person. We're really going to have to design programs and maybe modify goals that are really going to be focused on how do we not just meet the goals, but, try to get some of that catch-up provision in terms of the things where there's been slippage. So what are we going to do? How are we going to modify our delivery system, our goals that we've established? How are we going to make the learning experience maybe a little more intense where it needs to be, and in order to meet the needs of the people we're serving? And I think that there is going to be kind of more of a need to really relook at how we're delivering service and how we're performing service. As I mentioned before, political advocacy is going to be extremely important. Donors, everybody's going after donors. Donors are, 2020 was a good year for donations, and we'll talk about that in a little while. 2021, we're halfway through the year. I haven't seen a whole lot of statistics yet in terms of whether donations are up or not for 2021. The market had tailed off up until this month. So maybe we'll see an uptick with a more positive market. But we need to make donors feel more connected to our organization. You can now once again have events, and the question is really going to come down to, you're having these in-person events. Are people going to come? Are you going to get everybody you want there? And I think the new trend is going to have to be some sort of hybrid events where there's some level of in-person components to it and some level of virtual component to it, so that you've kind of got both. And again, I think you need to be totally creative in developing personal messaging to reach your donors. So from a donation perspective, from a survey that Fidelity Charitable did at the tail end of 2020, 25% of donors plan to increase their donations and 54% of donors plan to maintain. So again, if you look at that, you're looking at 79%, which means that there's 21% of donors who are going to cut back on their funding. So what do we need to do from a fundraising perspective? So we need to focus on retention. 14.2% of first-time donors in 2019 gave a second donation to organizations in 2020. That's only 14.2. That's such a small level. And I think part of it is because the nonprofit sector historically has not necessarily done a great job in terms of kind of working that relationship with donors. We need to have those good, as I mentioned earlier, open lines of communication with our donors. We need to not just send off a standard letter thanking them, but let's let them know, what impact did their gift have on the organization? How did they change lives? How did they help? Get them connected to your organization. Let them understand why they're important, and link their message to their interest. I think it's really, really important for donors to understand that you appreciate them, and for them to be able to see how they're making a difference and how they're changing lives and how they're having impact. And again, that can come through just sending regular information. From a marketing perspective, you think about it, if I'm trying to bring on a new client, I'm going to send out information to that client on a regular basis. It's called drip marketing. You should be doing the same thing with your donors. You should be sending out information on a regular basis to your donors, so that your donors understand what's happening within your organization. They understand what's going on. And that information could be things like videos and personalized messages and stuff like that. Maybe, if you're an organization that maybe is a daycare provider or a school. One of the things, a good example, one of the things that Book Fairies does. Book Fairies is a nonprofit organization that puts books in the hands of individuals who don't have access to books, including age-appropriate books for children. What they'll do on an occasional basis is they'll send out a quick message and a drawing from one of their children that have gotten books, about how much books mean to them. And, when you get a letter and you open it up and there's this drawing from a kid who says, thank you, the book that you funded gave me something to read and is changing my life. You can't help but feel connected to that organization. So you want that connectivity. And, what does the donor experience look like? What differentiates your organization from the million other organizations that are hitting that donor up for donations? What level of ongoing engagement do you have? How do you give them a sneak peek into what's happening behind the scenes within your organization? I mean, if you think about any of the TV shows that are out there that focus on things like American Idol or any of the reality shows, one of the things they do is they do backstories. And the reason they do the backstories, they want you to feel engaged and connected to the contestants. You need to do the same thing with your organization. You need to have that backstage tour or the backstories so that your donors feel connected to your organization. better linkage of donations. People want to understand how their donations are making a difference. To say, hey, you gave $100 and that $100 went into a pot of funds that we're using within the organization to cover administrative costs and everything else. That's not what people want to hear. They want to know that, their dollars help to feed families, that their dollars help to provide shelter. So again, the more you can kind of equate donations to impact of those donations, the better off you're going to be. And that doesn't mean that you want all of your donations to be restricted. You're just trying to look for that connectivity. I'm not going to, just so everybody understands, I don't plan on, and I'm not going to get through all of the slides in my presentation. What's more important to me is that, we touch on some bigger issues that are out there. Again, donors want to know how you pivoted and what you plan on doing in 2021. What does 2021 look like? And there's money out there. I mean, Giving Tuesday, which happened on December 2nd of last year, saw a 25% increase in dollars and a 29% increase in donors. So, if there's the right messaging and, people understand and people want to help, there's a desire in most people to make a difference, and you got to kind of help them to get there. As I said, the market was strong in 2020. There's been a pullback in 2021, though. June has been a great month in the market. You want to make sure that you can make it easy for people. If you don't already do it, I would set up a brokerage account and allow people to make donations of stock, because people can give appreciated stock with a tax advantage. So again, something that you guys should be thinking about. I think there's going to be a certain level of hesitancy with the economic uncertainty that currently exists. Again, a lot of people are still out of work and stuff. But again, I think it still comes down to cultivating relationships and stuff. Donors have a much shorter attention span. You need to show your impact succinctly. Again, that's where videos, I think, come in handy, infographics, those types of things. And consider racial and social equality as it relates to your mission, especially when you're dealing with corporate and foundation fundraising. We've seen a lot more foundations who have set up specific gifts for organizations with diverse leadership. So I think that's, and minority leadership. So I think that's something that's going to be important going forward. Again, how you communicate, I think is important. I mentioned before social media. And again, I think it's important to understand who the social media users are. Different social media platforms are going to work in different areas. The younger generation is definitely using social media. Things like TikTok, Twitch, Snapchat, and Instagram are the big ones for the 18 to 29-year-olds. 30 to 49 are using LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook. And then when you're looking at your older population, you're 50 and above, YouTube and Facebook are the big platforms there. So again, I think what it is, you need to look at who you're trying to attract, who you're trying to get your messaging out to, and then based on that, decide which social media platforms. Most organizations don't have the bandwidth to handle every single social media platform, but social media is extremely important, especially if you're trying to reach the next generation, the younger generation, because that's where they live. I mentioned before, videos are going to make up 82% of online traffic next year, according to Cisco. So again, you want to, if you're not already doing it, you want to get into videos and utilize videos to kind of push things along. We're starting to see increased levels of social entrepreneurism. Businesses are looking to become much more socially responsible. And nonprofits need to think more business oriented. So that means that we need to relook at how we partner with the business communities. And we should not be trying to shove square pegs into round holes, or round pegs in square holes, whatever the saying is. We should be looking to develop personalized sponsorships and personalized programs for the business communities that we're trying to work, business partners we're trying to work with. So again, find creative ways to partner with your businesses. Again, corporate giving is predicted to be increasing in 2021. So, you want to be part of that. Virtual events, I think, are here to stay. They may not be just virtual. They may be some sort of hybrid, but I think every organization should keep some level of virtual events in case, we have issues going forward. You want to make sure that you can kind of handle that. And as I said before, you need to engage your volunteers. Volunteerism is down about 47%. So, you really need to, coming out of the pandemic, figure out how you're going to re-implement volunteer management systems and everything else. Employees, what do you do with them in terms of bringing them back to the office or not? Workplace flexibility is the new normal. It provides a better work-life balance and it expands the talent pool. You can grab people from anywhere, but it also provides harder for coworkers to connect, increased isolation, blurring of work-life boundaries, and everything else. So again, you have to kind of decide what works for you. I know that there's a bunch more slides. I'm basically running out of time, so I'm going to actually stop sharing a second here and kind of jump back in. But we are moving to a new world, and things are different. They're not going to be what they were in 2020. 2021 is going to be or continue to be a unique year. In 2022, I really think is going to be a really challenging year for many nonprofits. So again, I'm really want to stress the fact that you need to be proactive. You need to plan. You need to start really getting back into that strategic thinking, bring everybody together and move forward effectively. So that's my message.